When you're following the news, you see distasteful stories, and I saw one this evening. In fact, it was sent to me, and I pressed on the link, and I looked at a bit of it, and I just thought, oh, this is just Dan Wootton doing his stuff, and then Lady Colin Campbell appeared, and groaning in her way, and it's just distasteful. Um, and Harry, let's start with Harry because Harry is at least somebody I can talk with without feeling sort of bile rising. And Harry's central claim is consistent across interviews, memoir, and litigation. He's not waging war on the royal family. He is waging war on a press culture he believes is unlawful, intrusive, and in some cases criminal. And that distinction matters. He's pursued legal action against publishers linked to newsgroup newspapers and other publishers over phone hacking and data misuse. Those claims sit in a well-documented tradition. The News International phone hacking scandal exposed genuine illegality, including voicemail interception and blagging of private information. Harry's argument is simple and on the evidence of past court findings, not absurd at all. Parts of the tabloid press broke the law. Those practices affected public figures, including his family. His mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, died in a context shaped by aggressive press pursuit. That doesn't mean the press caused the crash in a direct legal sense, but it does explain the moral and emotional stance that Prince Harry has taken. His campaign, and indeed his brother William, Harry's campaign, is rooted in grievance, but also in documented precedent. Now, contrast that with the interpretation offered by Wootton and Lady Colin Campbell, who both come across as unrestrained gossips. They take a broad and deliberate leap. Harry criticizes tabloids and data practices. They translate that into he is attacking the monarchy simply because he uses the word institution. And this is not an interpretation, it is a projection. It suits their audience and their commercial method and their model. And that method is familiar. Inflate, personalize, dramatize, then monetize. This is clickbait. Wootton in particular has a record that weakens his authority here. His career has been repeatedly overshadowed by allegations about journalistic and photographic conduct and workplace behavior. Even leaving aside specifics, his brand is built on provocation and outrage, all done with this sort of syrupy smile, which looks as if you're about to be embraced by Car in the Disney version of Jungle Book. It's not incidental. It is the business model. Outrage drives the clicks. Nuance does not. Lady Colin Campbell operates differently. She reaches the same end, and she like a baritone cocker spaniel. She trades on proximity to aristocratic culture and presents commentary as insider knowledge. Yet her interventions often rest on assertion rather than evidence. The tone is arch, theatrical, slightly menacing. Sue me, sweetie, bye. Is not analysis, it is performance. It invites attention, not truth.
Welcome back to our channel. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video so we can continue having these important conversations together. And to our returning viewers, your continued support truly means everything. It allows us to keep creating content that speaks truthfully, thoughtfully, and honestly about issues that matter. Today is a wonderful day to give credit where it is due, and that credit goes to Professor Tim Wilson for his strong, clear, and much-needed voice in support of Harry and Meghan. In a media environment that often feels repetitive, overwhelming, and at times deeply unfair, it is refreshing to see someone step forward and challenge the dominant narratives that have surrounded them for so long. In this powerful discussion, Professor Tim Wilson speaks out on the ongoing media debate surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex. He directly addresses the repeated criticism coming from commentators such as Wootton and Lady Colin Campbell, who have consistently focused on Harry and Meghan in ways that many viewers now find exhausting, predictable, and lacking in balance. This conversation is not just another opinion piece. It is a reflection of growing public frustration. It represents a shift in how audiences are responding to media coverage, and it highlights a demand for something better, something more thoughtful, and something more responsible. Professor Tim Wilson raises questions that many people have been asking privately, but have not always seen addressed publicly. Why does the same narrative keep repeating? Why are Harry and Meghan constantly placed under intense scrutiny? Why do certain commentators seem to revisit the same criticisms over and over again without introducing new perspectives? These questions are not just rhetorical, they go to the heart of how media narratives are constructed and maintained. What Professor Tim Wilson makes clear is that the conversation surrounding Harry and Meghan has, in many ways, become stagnant. The same talking points continue to dominate discussions. The same criticisms are recycled. The same tone is repeated. And when that happens, something important is lost. Depth is lost. Nuance is lost. Credibility begins to erode because audiences notice repetition. They recognize patterns. And over time, they begin to question the intention behind what they are seeing and hearing. Professor Tim Wilson does not shy away from this reality. He addresses it head-on, pointing out that when coverage becomes overly repetitive, it stops being informative and starts feeling agenda-driven. That distinction is critical. Media should inform, not overwhelm. It should explore, not fixate. It should challenge perspectives, not reinforce the same narrative endlessly. And this is where the frustration among audiences becomes understandable. Many viewers feel that coverage of Harry and Meghan has shifted away from balanced reporting and moved toward a cycle of opinion, speculation, and at times outright negativity. That shift has not gone unnoticed. People are asking for balance, they're asking for fairness, they are asking for a break from the constant repetition of the same narratives. And Professor Tim Wilson is giving voice to those concerns. Now, let's talk about the role of commentators like Wootton and Lady Colin Campbell. These are individuals who have built a presence around discussing Harry and Meghan. Their perspectives are widely circulated, and their commentary often shapes broader conversations. But as Professor Tim Wilson points out, there is a growing sense that this commentary has become predictable. And predictability in this context is not a positive thing. It suggests that the conversation is not evolving. It suggests that new information is not being meaningfully engaged with. It suggests that the focus is not on understanding but on reinforcing a particular narrative. And when that happens, the value of the commentary begins to diminish, because meaningful discussion requires growth. It requires new ideas. It requires a willingness to consider different perspectives. Without that, conversations become stagnant. They lose their ability to inform and instead begin to echo. That is the pattern that Professor Tim Wilson is challenging. He is not simply criticizing individuals. He is highlighting a broader issue within media discourse. A pattern where Harry and Meghan are consistently framed in a certain way. A pattern where criticism is constant but reflection is limited. A pattern where narratives are repeated without being questioned. And that pattern has real consequences. It shapes public perception. It influences how people understand events. It creates an environment where certain viewpoints dominate while others struggle to be heard. That is why this conversation matters, because breaking that pattern requires someone to step forward and ask difficult questions. And that is exactly what Professor Tim Wilson has done. Now, it is important to acknowledge that Harry and Meghan
remain figures of global interest. Their story continues to capture attention. Their journey continues to resonate with people around the world. And that level of interest naturally leads to media coverage. But here is the key issue. Interest does not justify imbalance. Attention does not excuse repetition without substance. Coverage should reflect complexity, not reduce it. And that is where Professor Tim Wilson's perspective becomes so important. He's not denying that people are interested in Harry and Meghan. He is questioning how that interest is being represented. He is asking why coverage so often leans toward negativity. He is asking why the same criticisms are repeated without meaningful analysis. He is asking why there is so little variation in the narratives being presented. These questions are essential because they challenge the assumption that current coverage is simply a reflection of public demand. Instead, they suggest that there is a gap between what audiences want and what they are being given. And that gap is where frustration grows. Now, let's consider the emotional dimension of this issue, because beyond the headlines and debates, there is a human element that cannot be ignored. Harry and Meghan are not just public figures. They are individuals who have experienced years of intense scrutiny. Every decision they make is analyzed. Every statement they give is dissected. Every action they take is interpreted through a lens that is often shaped by pre-existing narratives. That level of attention can be overwhelming, and when it is combined with repetitive criticism, it creates an environment that can feel relentless. This is something that Professor Tim Wilson indirectly highlights. By questioning the nature of the coverage, he is also drawing attention to its impact. Because media narratives do not exist in isolation, they influence how people are perceived. They shape public attitudes. They contribute to the environment in which individuals operate. And when those narratives are consistently negative or repetitive, they can create a distorted picture. That is why balance is so important. That is why fairness matters. That is why conversations like this are necessary. Now let's expand further on the idea of audience responsibility, because while media organizations play a significant role in shaping narratives, audiences also have power. They decide what they engage with. They influence what gains traction. They contribute to the direction of conversations. And increasingly, audiences are becoming more aware of this power. They are questioning what they consume. They are challenging what they see. They are demanding better. This shift is significant. It represents a move away from passive consumption toward active engagement. And that shift is part of what is driving conversations like the one led by Professor Tim Wilson. Because when audiences start asking questions, media has to respond. When viewers express frustration, narratives begin to change. When people demand balance, it creates pressure for improvement. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. Now let's also talk about the idea of narrative fatigue. This is something that many viewers are experiencing when it comes to coverage of Harry and Meghan. Narrative fatigue happens when the same story is told repeatedly without new insights. It creates a sense of exhaustion. It leads to disengagement. It reduces the impact of the message. And in this case, it is contributing to the frustration that Professor Tim Wilson is addressing. People are tired of hearing the same criticisms. They are tired of seeing the same narratives. They are tired of discussions that do not move forward. And that fatigue is important because it signals a need for change. It indicates that the current approach is no longer effective. It suggests that audiences are ready for something different. And that is where the opportunity lies. An opportunity for media to evolve, an opportunity for conversations to become more balanced, an opportunity for narratives to become more diverse. Professor Tim Wilson is pointing toward that opportunity. He is encouraging a shift away from repetition, a shift toward meaningful discussion, a shift toward a more thoughtful and responsible approach. And that is something that deserves recognition. Now, let's deepen this conversation by looking at how repetition shapes perception over time. When audiences are exposed to the same narrative repeatedly, it can begin to feel like the only narrative. Even when there are other perspectives available, they can become overshadowed by the sheer volume of repetition. This creates an imbalance. It limits the scope of understanding, it narrows the conversation, and it makes it more difficult for alternative viewpoints to gain visibility. Professor Tim Wilson's perspective challenges this dynamic. He is essentially asking for space for different voices, space for different interpretations, space for a more comprehensive conversation. And that is a powerful request, because it is not about silencing anyone. It is about expanding the discussion. It is about creating room for complexity. It is about ensuring that coverage reflects the full picture, not just a single angle. Now, let's also consider the long-term implications of this kind of media pattern. If repetitive and one-sided narratives continue unchecked, they can shape public perception in lasting ways. They can influence how future stories are interpreted. They can affect how individuals are remembered. They can contribute to a legacy that is not fully representative of reality. That is why it is so important to address these patterns now. That is why voices like Professor Tim Wilson's are so valuable, because they interrupt the cycle, they introduce reflection, they encourage accountability, and they create an opportunity for change. Now, as we move closer to the conclusion, let's reflect on the significance of speaking out. Because challenging dominant narratives is not easy. It requires courage, it requires clarity, it requires a willingness to stand apart from prevailing opinions. And that is what makes Professor Tim Wilson's contribution so impactful. He is not simply going along with the existing conversation, he is reshaping it. He is introducing new questions. He is encouraging deeper thinking. He is advocating for a higher standard of discourse. And that is something that benefits everyone. It benefits audiences. It benefits media. It benefits the overall quality of public conversation. Now, let's take a final moment to bring everything together. We have explored the ongoing media debate surrounding Harry and Meghan. We have examined the role of repetitive narratives and dominant commentary. We have discussed the growing frustration among audiences. We have highlighted the importance of balance and fairness. And we have recognized the significance of Professor Tim Wilson's voice in challenging the status quo. This is more than just a discussion. It is part of a broader movement toward more responsible media, a movement toward greater accountability, a movement toward conversations that are informed, balanced, and meaningful. And that movement is being driven by people who are willing to speak up, people who are willing to question, people who are willing to demand better. So once again, thank you, Professor Tim Wilson, for speaking clearly, for asking important questions, and for challenging narratives that have gone unexamined for too long. Thank you for bringing balance into a conversation that has often lacked it. Thank you for standing up and calling out the patterns that so many people have noticed. And to Harry and Meghan, this is a reminder that there are voices willing to push back against unfair treatment, voices that recognize the need for balance, voices that are committed to fairness, because fairness matters, balance matters, and truth matters. To everyone watching, thank you so much for being part of this discussion. Your engagement, your thoughts, and your perspectives are what keep conversations like this alive. If you found this video meaningful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps this channel grow and allows us to continue creating content that speaks to real issues. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about Professor Tim Wilson's perspective? Do you agree that the coverage of Harry and Meghan has become repetitive? We would love to hear from you. Until next time, take care, stay informed, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.